they don't have a home country, but you are my home country. And I thought it was so sweet.
Hi everyone, Elle Ballard here with you today from Women of the World Network. And I have my special guest with us today, all the way from Portugal. Hi.
Woohoo! Hi, good to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Elle.
Yeah, great to have you with us today. And I love what you do. I'm excited for this conversation. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Before we jump onto this conversation, I want to introduce Anieke first. So Anieke Lamers is a former venture capital investor turned startup founder on a mission to make every child in the world feel special. Anieke is the founder of PeeakABond, helping families across the world build meaningful connections with young children through her app. They offer science-based content suggestions and asynchronous video connection. She's from Netherlands and now lives in Portugal. Welcome. Welcome, Anieke.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm
Very
excited.
good to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And my first conversation that I love to ask is why you do what you do and what makes you unique.
Great. So it's an easy question for me. My founder story is as follows. So my sister, she is my best friend, and she lives in Australia, and she has two young daughters that I am really fond of, and I found it very hard to build up a meaningful connection with them and be present for them. And there's nothing more that I want than that. And I found it very hard to to find the right tools online, and
Mhm.
searched for it. And then when it wasn't existing, I thought, you know what, I'm going to build it, because I knew there were so many families across the world who are separated by distance for all sorts of reasons. And I thought, this is an impactful problem with a huge, also commercial market potential. And so I quit my job, and then I just started looking for the best solution out there, and that's when we built PeeakABond, which is a mobile app. And it's been downloaded in 70 countries already. um, I have a lot of international friends. I lived all over the world during my studies as well. In Australia, I lived in Kenya, in America, I did a study trip in Argentina, in London, and now I am in Portugal as well. So I think, to get to your question about what makes me unique, I guess it is that diverse background as well. Um, I think the playfulness is really something that I have had as a child. I still think sometimes that, the child in me is sort of having a really good time founding this company as well, because there's so much playfulness involved and creativity in it. But at the same time, there's also the depth of connection, which I value and think is important. So I think, yeah, that's probably what makes me unique.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the story behind it. That is so personal, but it's for me, it's just also I can definitely relate. It's very relatable story because of my own experience having family when my family, lived well, some of my family members still live abroad and having this connection. And I love how you also built in this additional features into it,
Exactly.
and it sounds like it's what your heart wants, and your mission is just coming from your heart. I love it. And building that for people as the world is getting smaller, we all interconnected, right? But at the same time we still live distance away, and with the time difference. Yeah, so I love that. So thank you for sharing that. um so I know you mentioned you travel so much, and we have
Mhm.
so much diversity in our community, women from different countries. And I myself also, original from a different country. And this question is, I like to ask somebody living in a different country, what country do you call home? because when we start
Yeah.
living in a new country, it changes us, we expand, right? Because it's culturally, it might be different, a different language, different cultures, and I love it. I love speaking to someone like you in another
Mm,
country, because I always learn something, I always grow, it just expands me, and that's why I'm so passionate about connecting women from all over the world. But when you started living in a different country, what country do you call home now?
I love that question. And it reminds me immediately, I was last summer at a wedding in Colombia from two friends of mine,
Mhm.
who are both living in Australia, but one of them is from Colombia, one of them is from the Netherlands. And during their sort of vows, one of them said that, they don't have a home country, but you are my home country. And I thought it was so sweet and it just made me cry. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is also how I feel with my partner. And it sounds super tacky, I know, but yeah, whenever I'm with my partner, that's where I feel home. So, I think if you really want to know a country, of course, I'm Dutch, so I have some sort of affinity with it. But I've been living now in Portugal for a little over 4 months, and I I already feel at home here. So yeah, when you're somewhere, you say, "Let's go home." It feels this is now home.
Mhm.
So I'm not that uh, how you say, married to the Netherlands, if you will, but more to yeah, my loved ones, if you will. My partner and my dog
Yeah.
are my home. Yeah,
Oh, thank
wherever
you.
they take me. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's unless you lived in a different country, people probably could never understand the degree of, right, the what that person might experience,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a different experience. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that, Anieke.
Sure.
And my next question also has to do something about your original country and the fact that you're living in a new country. And I love to talk about that as well. How have your background limited or favored you?
Mm. Um, I think, in terms of background, I'm from a small town in the Netherlands, called Weird. It's a really weird name. Um, and I think, anyone in the Netherlands should praise themselves lucky, right? We're like top 1% of the world if you just
Yeah,
look at the entire population. So I think, in that sense, we are all very fortunate. If you're even born in the Netherlands, you've basically hit the lottery, right? And then being in the Netherlands and also being able to go to university and um, having the opportunities that I've gotten in my life, I think it's just really amazing. And I think a lot of people take it for granted because sometimes you're also living in a bubble of expats or of like high how do you say, like high performers. So you're sort of comparing yourself to all the other high performers. And I think yeah, my background has favored me in that sense, like the fact that I'm Dutch, that I've had all the opportunities that I have. And that being said, being a woman within venture capital was definitely a unique selling point, right? There's not a lot of them. I think like 10% of the senior investment managers are women. Um, and now being a female founder also is something that really is unique, I guess, because less than 1% of venture capital goes to female founders in my country. I think in the US it's quite a similar number. I believe it's 2% or something like that. So it's become sort of a hot topic to invest in women
yeah,
and underrepresented founders as well. So I think less than 0.5% goes to Black founders. So that has sort of been an advantage for me as well. but yeah, the reason that the women are not invested in, or the underrepresented founders are not invested in, is of course because of lots of biases that people have against women as well. So that is something that maybe benefited me less. Um, and sometimes I get, because of that venture capital background, overestimated. I feel if I pitch to investors now and they hear, oh, she's from, she used to be an investor herself, then, I don't want to sort of compete with all the other investors that are waiting in line to invest, which is not fair, because actually I still have to work really hard for it. And it's really not easy to raise funding, especially for a business to consumer app, which I'm building. So I think in that sense, sometimes your background can also work against you.
Yeah. You touched on something that's so it's such I would love to have that conversation, and probably maybe we could do another podcast based on your previous experience, or just a conversation even on the whole women in business topics. I love that so much, and all of our members in our community are business owners, women business owners, and that's why I'm so passionate for that reason, on this topic. And I supporting and investing in women, but yeah, so I definitely would love to elaborate on that at some point and talk about in more detail based on your experience. I also love how you mentioned both sides. I noticed that you mentioned the favorite and limits, because I think there are always two sides to a story, right? And there is always could be said something to both sides of it. So I love how you mentioned both, and thank you so much for sharing and speaking from the heart. And I love it, because it's always so interesting for me to hear stories like yours, and just to gain different perspective, or something similar as well, because I have a similar story as well. So thank you for sharing that. Now I want to move on to the lessons, because you've worked in, again, you've mentioned the challenges of the industry that you've been. Now you are building your own business, but you're doing some of the things that you've learned and applying here, and raising capital. And in all of these experiences, and maybe since you've opened and you've launched PeeakABond, and now that you're building it and growing, and congratulations, by the way, on 70 countries you mentioned. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
That you have, and with that unique model. But what would you say was your biggest lesson, or something you had to overcome while building this business and being a multinational woman? Because your business also spreads across countries, and that's the idea behind it, right?
Yeah.
What would you say was your biggest lesson?
Yeah, I think for me, it has to do with work-life balance. And I think it's especially interesting in a multicultural setting, because, well, I'm from the Netherlands, and people, for example, are becoming a bit more accepting and a bit more modern towards, maybe the 4-hour work week, or, like good work-life balance, and being present in the people's lives that matter to you. But there's such a big contradiction, for example, also with US startup culture, where it's very hyped and cool to work really a lot of hours and just push, push, push. And I think it's for me also a struggle, because it's a huge passion of me, right? Like I love what I'm doing, and even in weekends or evenings when I sort of try to log off and I watch a movie with my partner, and the movie is about, I don't know, a mother or whatever, and I'm like, see, this is why PeeakABond should exist, because there's this story. So it's very hard for me to log off as well, because I'm so passionate about it. And then balancing that also with the fact that I have a family tech business where, our whole purpose is that we want to improve family bonds. So it would not make any sense if I'm sort of neglecting my own family bonds because I'm building my business, my baby, so to say. So I think I've been lucky enough to see a few examples of other successful, impactful founders who have really, been able to manage their personal lives as well as their professional lives and be very successful. So I do believe it's possible. But it is not it's not easy. So I think for me that's a constant battlefield. And I don't know. I think I don't know when you're going to release this podcast, but of course, a couple of weeks ago, we've all seen the president of New Zealand resign, and there were like these headlines like, "Can women have it all?" Like be the prime minister of New Zealand as well as have a good family life. And she said that she resigned because she, needed to be there for her family. And um, I think that's for women, especially such a topic. And I do believe that women can have it all. But then again, I'm also 32 and I don't have kids yet. So maybe I'm naive. I don't know yet. But I think daring to dream about it is already, step one. And that's probably my biggest lesson also in my company so far, and also setting a culture that has a good work-life balance also for the rest of the employees, and being conscious about different cultures, right? Like in the Netherlands, you have different holidays and bank holidays and rituals and everything than you have in Portugal, or you would have in, for example, Kenya or Uganda, where we also have people, and again, different in Abu Dhabi. And, so like, when are we off and when are we not? And those kind of things are also, I think, relevant to learn and to balance with the team.
You were sharing and I was just listening and smiling because I can so relate.
I was just curious, like how is it for you? Like especially in San Francisco, like San Francisco is quite insane in terms of like work hours, is what I've heard as well. So for most people, maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
So I grew up in Kazakhstan, right? And so for me, it's so when you were sharing, there's so many like couple of touch points that I wanted to really like connect and elaborate on and give my perspective, because I grew up overseas, so life work balance, and I love how in Europe it's really welcomed, and people they have this awareness to pursue that lifestyle, and I love that, and I totally support that. And for me, it's very, very important to be able to finish my workday and I can continue later, but for me it's very important to include the passion activity that I love. And I do have daughters, two daughters. They are not little anymore, so that helps, because we women, it's not easy to be a mom and to build a business and to be able to disconnect between the two when needed, physically, emotionally, mentally, right? Because your business is my business is my third baby. So like I have some kids, it's a baby, but I still I'm a big supporter, and I love talking about life and business as a whole in our community. I myself love dancing, so my passion is dancing outside of business, which helps me move my body, get away mentally completely from what I was doing. And it not only gives me creativity, but also increases, my feminine energy. So I go back to who I am, so I can come back completely recharged. So I love talk about that, and whatever it is for a woman, right? Whatever that is for her, that connects to her soul, I think it's very important for us to have that and find time for that. And when I say that, I mean, I think outside of our day to day, I think outside of being mom, outside of being a CEO, business owner, I think we should find, we should be, well, I shouldn't maybe say the word should, but for us, it's important to find that time to do that, because that increases our happiness level. It's just different level of fulfillment in life, I think.
Yeah.
In how many hours that is in a day or a week, I think it's and it might be easier said than done, to find that time. But I think it's very important in the long run. At the end of the day, why are we building, right? And it comes back to, why are we building this business if we are miserable and and we cannot enjoy that money, we cannot enjoy that lifestyle, and then at the end of the day, and then why do we do it, right? And so I think I'm such a big support of this conversation. I love it when you mentioned it.
I think what I would like to touch upon that, like when I started sort of co-founder dating both my two other co-founders, we had a sort of really good discussion. And it was with a few actually really good prompting questions. One of them was like, what do I need to show up as the best version of myself every day in the office, or in the virtual office in our case. And for some that's enough exercise, and for some it's dancing, and others it's maybe surfing or whatever.
Right.
And the other question was like, what signals do I show when I don't show up as myself? So for me, it was very clear that I'm a very present and enthusiastic, and like when I'm there, you can totally tell that I'm in a room because I'm very high energy person. I think if I don't get what I need in order to show up as my best version of myself, I actually become more introverted. So I would share this with my co-founders. And then the third question is, how should we approach each other if we notice that we're not in our sort of zone of genius, or in our like bubbly self sort of mode? And how can we help each other to get out of it? So I think that was for us like really good. And I think even last week I had a meeting where I was like introverted and not saying anything, and then my co-founder Elia, she gave me a call afterwards, and she's like, hey, what's up, you didn't seem like yourself. I was like, like I'm frustrated or something like that. And then we talk about it, and then I sort of said, I think you need to go for a run, because she knows that I need the movement, and just clear your mind and get back. And it's what I did. And then, I felt so much lighter afterwards. So, and I think I would recommend, I don't know if most women in this group are solo founders, but obviously you can have that conversation as well with your life partner, or with those close to you, to help coach you into where you feel happy.
Yeah, I love that. It takes such a big, I think it takes awareness, right? For people to, catch themselves on that. And then, feeling it, not feeling at this moment. And we all have different days, of course, we are all humans. But I think catching ourselves, and this is what do I need at this moment to shift this? And I think it's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. For solo, definitely for those life partners, I think it's so applicable, even day to day, right? Just to have this open conversation, communication. It's just, so I love that. In the other part I wanted to really quickly say, when you mentioned about the movies, I can totally relate. When I watch the movies, when and I love, I love empowering women. I love so anything that triggers me there, whatever I'm watching,
Yeah.
I'm definitely thinking about what I'm building. But I think that's when I know that it's so deep in my heart, and I have such a passion for it, that sometimes it's hard to disconnect my personal life from a business,
Mm,
because it's all interconnected for me. Sometimes I'm going to sleep, I cannot wait to wake up so I can just do this thing that I love to do. And I think
mm,
and that's where it's hard for. But when you were mentioning that, I could totally relate. Yeah,
yeah.
but I personally love it, because then I just get this ideas flowing, even though I'm watching something on a completely different topic. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
might be completely irrelevant to someone else, but for some reason, for me, the dots can connect, and then I can apply to it. So I think
Mm.
that's so cool. But yeah, so I love this conversation so much.
Good. Me too.
Okay, so I'm going to move to the rapid fire questions.
Okay, let's do it.
The fun part of not that this was not fun, it's so much, always so much fun. I love doing this. Okay, so we'll have five rapid fire questions, and are you ready?
I am. Hit me.
Beautiful. Okay, beach
Yeah.
or mountains?
Mm, mountains. And I
Mhm.
live by the beach, so
Yeah.
but I love mountains. Yeah.
I love it. Favorite international destination to visit?
Australia.
Hmm. Oh, I have to go. I have never been. Summer or winter?
Summer.
Mm. And last question is things that you have discovered about yourself recently.
Ooh. Um, well, um, there's an interesting theory. I already knew this sort of from my coach education. I don't know if you've ever heard of the theory of like the selves, where you have characters sort of living inside your head, like the
Mm.
movie Inside Out, where they each have like you have anger and you have fear and you have happiness and I think a fourth one I can't come up with it. But anyway, every person has sort of characters inside their heads, and you have the ones that you sort of okay with because you sort of really like them, but you also have the ones that you really don't want to see the day of light because it's kind of like a part of you that you sort of really despise.
Oh.
um, so I recently sort of found out about myself, and I'm a little bit ashamed of it, maybe as well, but that I sort of really enjoy being a startup founder and being like super scrappy. So I know that, it would be so comfortable to have like a huge paycheck and, you can just spend it on like really nice clothes and everything. I've had that when I was a venture capital investor. And I think deep down, it was also a bit boring. And
Mhm.
now I have to really make means ends with like the minimum, and I have to be super creative, and I never throw away anything anymore because I sort of repurpose everything for everything else. And this was one of the things where I sort of thought, oh, there is some sort of person inside of me who really sort of has a kick out of like having the least means as possible and just making the most of it,
Mm.
which I thought, that's an interesting one. And
Yeah.
yeah, as soon as it became more conscious, I sort of also let it rule my life less in the unconscious mode, if you know what I mean. So is going quite deep, but it's uh, it's also now easier for me to sort of um, make decisions. Okay, I am not going to do the scrappiest thing ever because that little voice in my head can also sometimes shut up. So I can now sort of buy myself something really nice because I know that person is there, and sometimes they can just shut up,
Yeah.
But if you never let that voice in your head have the room that it needs to have, it sort of controls your life a bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought it was a very interesting theory, and
Yeah.
for me, it worked that way. And I thought, hey, that could also be interesting for a lot of people listening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's like a unconscious, voice inside your head, not being heard, and
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of behind the steering wheel of your life. And maybe it's time to just listen to it for a second and then sort of get past that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. It's an interesting perspective. And yeah, I love and thank you for sharing from the heart today and just, being so transparent.
Sure.
I enjoy this conversation. Thank you for taking the time again, Anieke. Love what you do. And as we are finishing, please let our listeners know how they can find if they were interested to maybe take a look at PeeakABond and how did they maybe get hold of that?
Yeah. So the best way to reach me personally is through LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So I hope you will add the link
We will.
to the podcast so people can just find me. And then please also, if you're listening and you have someone in your network, or maybe you have young children yourself, and you want to try out the PeeakABond app, we think it's amazing because we really try to help families such as yours to connect in a meaningful way with young children at a distance. So you can download it for free on the app stores. The website is peekabond.com. So PeeakABond.com. And if anyone is downloading it and wants to give me feedback, I would love that because we're a learning organization. So every week new features are being built, and we're really, eager to learn what people need in order to improve the product. So I also speak still with users every week to understand, okay, where should we move it?
Mhm.
Ultimately, we want to have 80 million memories in 2028. So that's like
Oh,
in 5 years. So that's like our North Star that we're going for. Obviously not from like we think of like 4 million families that we want to help connect by then.
uh-huh.
But especially like all those small moments, they can make a difference, like showing your presence in someone's life. So
Beautiful.
we're really trying to create a movement
Yeah,
where people are conscious that just because you're separated by distance doesn't mean you cannot be
yeah.
present in the lives of the people you love. So yeah,
What designates a memory? Like one memory, what is it? Like what do you mean by that?
we
Is it a
create
post or in
it,
the
it is like in our current app, it's videos. So you
videos?
can also
Okay.
send pictures, but
Mhm.
basically we build memories through video messaging. So you can
Uh-huh.
share a video like, hey, I'm thinking of you, or it can be something super simple like, today I'm grateful for, and then you can share what you're grateful for with your loved one who is far away from you.
Oh.
And that way, I think, those smaller moments
Mhm.
ultimately add up to, bonds and bigger things in life. So that's what we're about.
So it can be between countries, just one more thing, between countries, or it can be people living in the same country but different
Yeah,
cities, right?
correct. Like we have a lot
So,
of interstate families as well in the US, of course.
mhm.
There, even if you're in the same city, it can also sometimes be difficult to
Yeah,
see each other every week because of busy lives and things to just get in between. So, I think we're trying to make it very easy to not lose track of each other, of
yeah,
the people who you love, and
yeah.
especially those young children. That's our first focus.
Yeah, that is so cool. I love it. Okay, so I definitely am. I'm gonna download it. I was gonna,
Woo!
yeah, I'm gonna definitely do it.
Thanks.
I have a family all over, and I think it will be so cool to do. So please check out
Give it a try.
PeeakABond.com, our listeners. Beautiful
Thanks.
mission. I love it. Thank you so much, Anieke, for taking the time today to join us. Great
You're welcome.
conversation, and have a beautiful weekend ahead. And I
I
will talk to
will.
you very soon.